The first guy, though, that we need to talk about is one of the big names on the market. We've kept our eye on the possibility that receiver JuJu Smith-Schuster, Steelers MVP 2018, a bit of news that really brought about the end of Antonio Brown's time in Pittsburgh. We thought Smith-Schuster would move on, but when the big money didn't flow in his direction, staying in Pittsburgh became an option. 1 year, $8 million deal. They used voidable years to drive down the cap charge because they don't have the cap space. The Ravens were the other team that was a finalist for JuJu. That would have been something if he'd gone to Baltimore. I'm told that Baltimore offered more on the base amount of $9 million for 1 year, not $8 million, plus incentives up to another $3.5 million more, Charean. But JuJu decides to continue his career in Pittsburgh for a year, and then maybe next year he's in a position to make more on the open market.
And, Mike, they just now announced this deal and announced the voidable years on the back end, so it is official now. And we said yesterday this was probably the best move for him if he wasn't going to get the big money that he thought he was going to get. And obviously he didn't get that big money, that multi-year deal, that the best move on a one-year deal was to go back to Pittsburgh, a place you're familiar with, a place where Ben Roethlisberger knows you very well, a place where you can go prove yourself perhaps this year and get a bigger deal next year when there's going to be more money on the market. So I think this was a good move for JuJu Smith-Schuster to return to Pittsburgh. Yes, he turned down bigger deals elsewhere. Kansas City and the Eagles also reportedly were in on him.
Eagles weren't.
Eagles weren't. As much. The Eagles weren't.
Eagles
okay.
weren't.
Chiefs
no,
maybe were. Ravens for sure. So he had options to go elsewhere for more money, but it wasn't enough, Mike, to entice him to leave Pittsburgh. So he gets a chance to go back and get a bigger deal next year on the open market.
Chiefs got involved too late to get his attention, and the number wasn't enough to get his attention. He was locked into the Steelers or the Ravens. And look, if he'd gone to the Ravens, the risk he's taking is he's rarely going to see the football. In Pittsburgh, I don't know how he fits into that depth chart now, Charean, because they've got some good young receivers there, and I'm surprised they felt compelled to bring him back. 1 more year with Ben Roethlisberger could help. Next year, though, when the Steelers presumably step into their post-Ben existence, that's when it's going to make sense for JuJu to move on, because when free agency begins, unless the Steelers pull off a trade that we're going to know about before free agency begins, JuJu would be taking a job to stay in Pittsburgh without knowing with certainty who the Steelers quarterback would be in 2022, which would make it harder for him, depending upon who the quarterback is, to have the kind of year that he would want in 2022 to cash in 23. So I think the plan is have a big year, see what's out there next year, and then next year maybe it's Baltimore or Kansas City or the Jets or somewhere else for JuJu Smith-Schuster. But an upset for him to stay in Pittsburgh, a good outcome for the Steelers. And as you said, the deal is now official. The deal is announced. JuJu is sticking around for year number 5, far less than what the franchise tag would have been. Some people were surprised they didn't franchise tag him. Well, he's not a number 1 receiver. And that's something that one executive told me today. One of the reasons why the free agency money isn't there for the receivers this year, apart from the fact that there are plenty of good young receivers coming into the league every year now, there's no clear number 1 out there. There's no guy that you're going to game plan against. Kenny Golladay, if he's healthy, maybe. Chris Godwin's not a number 1 guy. I'm still surprised the Buccaneers franchise tagged him. Allen Robinson, as of yesterday, I'm not signing my franchise tag. Then the Bears flirt with Kenny Golladay, and what happens? Allen Robinson beats a path to the franchise tender and signs the thing because the Bears may have realized, why are we paying this guy $17.9 million when the market just isn't there? So smart move by JuJu to get what he can and to focus Charean on next year. And some of these other guys like Golladay got to be wondering what's really going to be out there once we get into the second week of free agency.
No question, Mike. It's been a weird year for these receivers and something we sort of expected going into free agency. 2 interesting things about JuJu's contract. A, he is the 3rd receiver to sign a second contract with the Steelers in the modern era. The other 2, of course, are Hines Ward and AB, got those second contracts. Even if it isn't the multi-year deal he wanted, he will stay on a second contract for 1 year. And the other thing you look at with the Steelers, Mike, is how much they've sacrificed on defense. They're up against the cap, as we said. We know that, squeezed. But they've lost 4 defensive guys who were key to that defense last year: Bud Dupree, Mike Hilton, Vince Williams, and Tyson Alualu. They played 2,100 snaps among them last year. That's an awful lot of snaps for a really good defense. So JuJu going back to this team, to me, puts a lot on the offense to get this done, because the defense may not be quite as good as what it has been last year and previous years, because we know that defense has carried the Steelers. So a lot, to me, is riding on Big Ben finding a rejuvenation for one more year and trying to get over the hump, and now he's got his receiver back to be able to try to do that.
At age 39 and just 2 years removed from his
39.
elbow going in week 2. So I still believe that by the time we get to November or December, both sides are going to say, why did we do this, as it relates to Ben and the Steelers.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.